What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another One Piece related video. This video, guys, we're experimenting with some small changes, some adaptations, potentially some growth for Rebecca. I have tested this deck thoroughly now. I very much enjoy it. This is going to be kind of the deck probably predominantly for the series of the videos that I'll be releasing this. This is going to be kind of going over a play-by-play review conceptualization of how I'm facing each of the matchups. So I would have had one today that would have covered Perona, it would have covered Boa, and it would have covered Black Yellow Luffy. All three very meta heavy decks. Problem is that I did not record my first two games, so very upsetting that I got 2 wins against 2 matchups that are considerably terrible for Rebecca, and just kind of showcasing a little bit of luck and a little bit of thought process of what I'm trying to do, and maybe a little bit of greed on my side on some of the plays. But in any case, the changes we've made to the list. So this is the very much the same list that I'd kind of been running. The big difference is we dropped 1 patchwork because 3 of I think is perfectly fine. Dropped down to 2 Colosseums because our consistency of finding them at 3 is about the same at finding them at 2. I've tested it multiple times. It actually feels better at 2 because I have the expectation that I'm not going to see it as often, and because of that expectation going down a little bit, when I do see it, it's actually a little bit of a surprise. There are a couple of matchups you still really want to see it in, or you really want to see your searcher in so that you have a better chance of finding it early. Other than that, you play without it, and it works actually pretty well. Another big change is that we got rid of the Kobe's, added in 2 Orlumbuses. As much as I'd kind of preached about how this card is not that great, having it as a 2 of is not that bad, but it being the main cost reducer of the deck is pretty rough, so just having it as a secondary cost reducer is pretty solid. It also enables us to be able to bring in something like Leo, who, unlike Kobe, is a searchable. He also helps mill the deck, so this allows us to get through the deck a little bit faster, so that if we do end up accidentally milling some of our top end, the upside is that we can mill through it a little faster between Leo, Rebecca's, and Orlumbus's to enable us to get back to that second rotation so that we can actually get to our 10-drop Kuzans and Aramakis and play for that as an actual win condition type of thing. We've dropped down our Luffy's by 1. He's not the primary win con. If we see him, there's a couple of matchups where he's kind of particularly useful into, but we have enough consistency of finding him through the deck, either by milling him out and getting him back with Rebecca, or just using our searchers to find him, so it'll be okay. Other than that, everything is roughly the same. We did drop our Kiroses down by 1 because we did add the Leos in. And with the Leos, the Brooks, and the Kiroses, it is technically 1 less than what we had when we had the Kobe's in, but it also reduces our number of non-counters, because a big thing that a lot of people noticed, and I myself noticed, was the fact that the deck was kind of bricky, because you could actually hit a lot of non-counters. And if I got to show the Boa matchup, it would have showcased the brickiness of the deck, but the availability of just controlling the deck and getting back into the game just through the sheer amount of control that the deck has. Honestly, I've actually very much been enjoying this build. I've tested it about 7 games today. I think it's really fun. But let's jump into the matchup. I did manage to record a second Black Yellow Luffy. I was debating doing another one at the very end of this, at the video recording of it, but I just played like 7 games in a row, so I was kind of mad at myself for not having recorded all those games, but, you know, sometimes you mess up. But the nature of this deck remains the same. It is a fatigue build. I do promise to the guy in the comments that asked me to make a fatigue build without Kuzan, I am working on it. I just want to make sure that I have a generalized strategy that I like. Currently, I don't really like Isho. We can get into that in a different time, but I've mentioned it in the comics. I don't like him. He kind of feels like a dead card that you have to kind of force into certain situations. There are a handful of situations where you are ahead and your opponent is just building a hand, and it can actually snowball you, which is great. But as Rebecca, you never really feel like you're that ahead, and if you do, he's kind of a win more card in that scenario because you're already got like Kuzan on board and swinging at them. So in the case of Rebecca, I just feel like because our leader doesn't swing, certain cards like that really kind of need you to have an advantage board state to just punish your opponent even more, isn't necessarily good for us, and it feels more like a win more. So let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of this. We're going to be watching gameplay from this Black Yellow Luffy matchup. So my first turn here, I did mulligan. I didn't record the mulligan, but I did mulligan because my initial hand did not have a Kiros. It did not have a Brook. It had none of our early game KOing. It did have a decent amount of counter to it. But the big things that we want to see into Black Yellow Luffy are going to be either a lot of early game KO so that he doesn't get to swing with the searchers and get chip damage in, which is very important in the matchup. Keeping as much life as we can as we head towards late game is very, very important. On top of that, if you can open with a gravity blade, keep the hand. Like, even if it's just like, ooh, I got like 1k counter. Like, look at this hand. This hand has like no counter to it. It has our Coliseum though, and it has a Kuzan for late if we ever need it, and then it also has a gravity blade. Gravity blade is super important in this matchup. Bottom decking is 5 costs, really turns off the ability that Luffy has to maintain his ability multiple turns in a row. On top of that, 10-drop Kuzan is really good to keep because he is one of our boss monsters, and having a big swing into the Luffy does mean that we have to build cards out of his hand. And if we decide to go at his life one of the turns beforehand, it can actually enable us to go in before he gets to start doing his combo pieces. But it also depends when he gets his combo hits. But he did force us to go first. We generally want to go second. I would not recommend going first against him if you can help it. If you have to, we'll watch this video, and this is kind of how you're going to have to play it a little bit. Hope for certain cards here. I am covering my video. I make a lot of weird faces. I have it muted, so we will hear the card sounds, but we won't hear anything from me. This was a pretty normal game overall. I don't think that this game had anything particularly like, ooh, super fancy or anything like that. We have now hit our Luffy, which is pretty good. So here, the reasoning I am putting Brook out on 3. So we don't have our Coliseum. I didn't develop it on 1. I wanted us to get the draw power. Some cases I do want to develop it, but that would be if we had a Kyros in opening hand. You do want to play this opposed to using the leader ability. Kyros' tempo is just way better than getting the extra card. Also, in something like Gecko Moria, you would actually prefer to play this if you're going first, and that's because you want to have less cards in your hand so those Peronas are offline most of the time. Anyhow, here we're not putting out the stage. We don't have anything that really needs it on curve right now, and right now it looks like that my next turn is going to be Orlumbus Coliseum. There's not really a reason for me to have to Sabo this early, even if I did, because he could chip at me, but like, whatever. If he chips at me 1 damage, it'll be fine. If he tries to stick a ton here, we'll sack the Rebecca, that's fine. But it's looking like our next turn is going to be Orlumbus and a Coliseum, just to kind of set up something so that we have some synergy with Brook. If we find anything like a Kyros, then we can just start popping stuff like crazy. So let's take a look at it. So into this next turn here, we got rid of his 2k attacker. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I started trying to look to see if I was recording because I was like, this is when I realized at this point, I was like, oh, I'm not recording, or I wasn't recording the previous games. Like I hit record at the beginning of this game, and I was like, did I record the other ones? And I looked and saw that I didn't. I was very upset. Which is very upsetting because they were both, like I said, bad matchups that had great recordings to showcase how we could actually win those matchups. So here he does get a chip damage at us. It gets us a 2k out of life, which is perfectly fine. We are currently running 10 2ks in here because we added in the Gyats, because having Gyats, one, he enables the cards with Coliseum to be able to attack actives that are not Luffy. On top of that, Gyats is another card that we can toss into the field as a 1-drop that then enables our Orlumbus to do a -4. So it's basically pay 1 -4, mill 2 off the top of our deck. That's pretty solid usage in case we don't have one of our Kyroses. So like I said, this turn we are setting up the Orlumbus, we are setting up the Coliseum. We want to develop a board state that is threatening stuff. We are swinging to clear here without going at life. We don't want to chip his life down. We want him to stay at life. We want to kind of choke him and force him to have to play a lot of cards to remove cards from his life. Because if he has to play like a 5-drop Luffy and mill a card from his life, even though he gets to draw a card, that's technically a cycle to a degree. He's cycling from life to get a card to add. On top of that, it's just forcing him to have to do stuff, and if he overloads the board too early with his 5 costs to try to get this milled out, then we can just bottom them. Otherwise, we're just forcing him to have to take an off turn to swing into our Brook. Now here, he does do something a little bit interesting here. Let me see if I can... it's not working. Okay, so here he does decide to swing his Flampe into our Brook. So when he does swing the Flampe into the Brook here, I elect to let the Brook die. I have a 2k. I have 2 2ks in hand. I could use my Rebecca as a 1k, but I have the Rebecca. So like at worst case scenario here, we can get a character. We can get the Brook back, and as long as we find another Dressrosa character that I'm okay with KOing with Orlumbus, if he were to develop a character, we get there. Now note, I didn't want to throw away the Toy Soldier here. I misclicked. I was trying to click on Bardo, and I threw away the Toy Soldier. In any case here, you want to hold Toy Soldiers in your hand as long as you can. Use your Bardos effectively as 2Ks, and hold Toy Soldiers unless you really have to use a 2K. And a big part of that is because he is a Dawn Reducer. So, like, even if I couldn't find a character here, I could play him and then get rid of something here. So here he does an Ivankov. He puts the Luffy. Sorry about the cough. He does lose a Gecko Moria, which is one of the best cards we could see him mill out of his life. But he does put one of the 4-drop Luffys, the KO Luffys. You'll see me look at it here a couple times. We do find our Kyros, which means we can KO this character. We're then setting it up so that we can use Orlumbus Kyros to be able to clear something. This turn, we don't have the setup for it. If we had it, if we had an extra Don here, it would be fine. I don't want to swing at his life. He has no characters that are rested for me to swing at. So I elect to just have a pass, even though I really don't want to pass with this much Dawn up. I am at 6 cards. I think I elect to use leader ability here. Hopefully I did. Maybe I ended. Oh, no, it looks like I ended without using leader ability. So that is technically a misplay. I was at 6 cards. I wasn't focused on that. I was checking what's in his trash. I was prepping for stuff, realizing I didn't have the combo piece here, and I could have... Or you know what? I think I did lead... Oh, I already leader ability. That's why I didn't do it. I leader ability to the Kyros. Sorry. I just watched this happen, and I already messed it up. But I watched... You know, we can't leader ability again, so we just have 3 extra Dawn. I could play a Bardo. I really don't want to deploy a Bardo, though, because we know there's a Luffy here. Yes, it might mean that he doesn't kill the Orlumbus, but it does mean that we effectively lose a 2K and we lose a blocker, and I value having that in hand just to prevent attacks than to soak up removal. So this turn, we're pretty sure he's going to Luffy in some way, somehow. Hihiori's, which was a choice here. He took the bottom of his life. And then he put Sabo on top, gets the Sabo, and instead of using the Luffy that he put, which I think he used the Ivankov and he put the Luffy on bottom, which I didn't realize. I thought he put it on top. So when this happened, I was super confused. I was like, maybe I read the wrong Luffy multiple times. But no, he has the Luffy on bottom. I want the Ivankov gone. I know I have Coliseum already readied, so I grab the Luffy, toss a Dawn on him. I want to make sure I can leader ability, and we swing 8 into his Sabo. Sabo's cleared. Perfectly fine. That Sabo being in his trash isn't that big of a deal, because once he's down on no life and using this to go, if he elects to use it to KO something, then he only gets 1 reanimate, and we're okay with that. Here, technically, so let's actually go over this part here. Let's go back a couple seconds here. I decided to start putting everything back into my life to restand Luffy. And the reason I do this is I'm pretty positive he's going to use a baby of some sort this turn to get something out of his life, which would mean that his Luffy could potentially just swing into my 7-drop and clear it. I think this card is way too valuable to be cleared this early, so I'm playing to keep it alive. On top of that, we have now drawn another Gravity Blade, which means we are super set if he tries to overload the board with multiple 5 costs. This turn, we actually get to do something pretty cool here. So he drops his Luffy initially to KO my Kyros. He doesn't get through with it. He's then going to try it again, which does take him a bit of time to figure out how to do it. He ends up doing it. He also gets the ace. He's now rested both my leader and my stage, so he's vulnerable. I think he swings 7 here. I could keep Kyros alive, but I don't really value having to keep him alive because we have the Luffy on board, right? We have the Luffy. The Kyros is really more, and we're not going to get in for a swing on his life. We take a damage and we get Kyros back anyways. So we're kind of okay with this. So this turn here, the thought process that I'm looking for, I want to find a Sabo. So I could just use, I can't use leader ability, too many cards in it. And the reason I want to find a Sabo, though, is I want to start fixing my life. I also want to make it impossible for him to get back that 4-drop Luffy and start threatening any of my blockers, because I need to turtle up a little bit. So I search with Rebecca. I happen to hit one of my Sabos, which is really good. So the game plan here is now we play Rebecca. We can get back our Brook, which is what I believe I do. Yep, get back the Brook. We deploy a Kyros just to get some board threat going, and then we play the Sabo to draw some cards. We get rid of one on the Kuzans because it's a dead card, and it's not looking like we're going to get into a point where we can play 1, let alone 2, so we don't really need it. And I get rid of the Hajj Rudin because, like I said, Gravity Blade is super important, so even though it's not a counter, it's not a card that I particularly think... you know, so I have to choose one of the 1Ks. I prefer to keep the Brook. I prefer to keep the Leo because Leo won't synergize with the Hajrudin. And if worst case push comes to shove and I need that Hajrudin back some reason, if I get another Rebecca, I can get him back. I can't get the Leo back, and I literally just got the Brook back. So, yes, he technically has knowledge of the Brook in the hand, but Brook in the hand is better than 1 in the trash. You know, maybe that's the adverb. Maybe that's the adage that people should be saying. Anyhow, my opponent does take a little bit of time here to start thinking out his attacks. My game plan here is if he swings just a vanilla 7, we're going to give him a 2K and a 1K because I want to maintain as many blockers as I can. He can't use the 4-drop Luffy to bring him back. At this point, I believe my opponent is currently at 6 cards in hand now. I forgot where he's at hand-wise, but he has a decent number of cards in hand. But if I prevent his Luffy from being useful, then it's less likely he's going to bring it back. And if he does bring it back, it's going to stay on board, which means I can get rid of it. Which I believe is exactly what ends up happening. So he does swing his 7. Like I said, 2k, 1k. We get rid of the Leo. We get rid of the 2k. Again, probably should have gotten rid of the Bardo, but I was thinking here, okay, well, if I need a second blocker, I probably should keep the Bardo just in case in this scenario. We don't really need much removal because our Gravity Blades get rid of anything that's a real threat. So he does develop a big board here with a Sabo, fixes his hand. He's down to like 4 or 5 cards in hand. So this turn, my thought process here, let's go back a bit. So this turn, my thought process was easy. We're going to Gravity Blade. Sabo needs to go away because it's a blocker, and it's going to prevent me from being able to get a big swing with Luffy over him next time. And the Luffy needs to go away because the Luffy's big. So here I do make a misplay. So right here, I swing 7 with the Kyros. And I really shouldn't have. I should have just swung 7 with the Luffy. There's no point to checking with the Kyros. Because if I do, like, let's say I do 9 with the Luffy here, and it dies, then the best part of that is I can then potentially restand and swing into the Gecko. Instead, I swing 7 with the Luffy, which does get us the ace. And the reason I want to go for the ace here over the like trying to get the Gecko, it's pretty much a guaranteed kill, but it was stupid of me to test it double with the ace or with the Kyros. I should have just put the 2 on the Luffy and done 9 there. Like I said, my thought process was like, oh, I could get like a second swing with the ace, but second swing with the Luffy, but I don't know why I was thinking that. I could have just done 9 with the Luffy and basically guaranteed the ace dies. But I also didn't. Oh, another big reason was I also didn't want my Luffy to have to be restood because I wanted to maintain trash numbers and not have to really worry about trying to get it the next turn. Because I wanted to set up so that maybe if he didn't have another Sabo, we could swing with Luffy at face. He did have another Sabo. He starts setting it up here. This one I'm not going to be able to block anyway, so I just eat it. He's going to bring them back, which he does. Let me go back a couple seconds here. So he brings both of them back using just babies out of the hand, which then leaves him at 2 cards in hand. Now note, he has I believe he is now like a 9k leader. I could legitimately just swing twice with Luffy and I'd get through the Sabo and probably get through and for the win. But I don't know why. I just didn't do the math in my head there and think about that. Like, oh yeah, I could just get through the Luffy and then get through the Sabo and get through face. So I played it a little bit more reserved. I know he doesn't have another attack here. If he tries to swing with the Hiyori here, we'll actually have enough to potentially we'll be fine here. Because even with the Hiyori, if he did like 7 with the Hiyori, right? We have enough counter in hand, we're fine. We have 2 2Ks, a 1K, and another 1K, another 1K, and we have whatever comes out of life. As long as this isn't a Kyros, which I've already done my count, there's 3 Kyroses already seen, we'll be fine. I mean, it could be any of our other guys that are negatives, but unlikely. Based off of what I've seen. We've seen 2 Gravity Blades, 2 Aramakis, I think, and a Kuzan, and another Kuzan. So, like, our chances of it being a non-counter is kind of low. So at this point, I'm looking at what he has. He's upping for his leader. He's already discarded. He does take a little while for this decision here, and I'm like, okay, if he has double ace, but he doesn't have double ace, baby. So even with a Gecko, he can't, right? So he can get the Luffy, which gets him a net draw of a card. But because he does this, he only gets a 7k swing, which we have plenty of counter to get out of, and then he swings at life again. We have to take it. We know we're okay with that. It was a dead card, which was a miscalculation by me at that point. It's like, oh, I thought I saw both Aramakis, but I hadn't. I'd only seen one. But at this point, we're golden. He doesn't have any blockers. He has 2 cards in hand, so we just now get our guaranteed win with the Luffy. And I was pretty positive there's really no way for him to get out of that game there. He would have to have had both a 5-drop ace. He would have to have 2 5-drop aces in trash, which he only had 1 at the time. And he'd have to have, or 2 baby aces in trash and 1 in the hand, and a 5 ace in the hand. He didn't have either, right? He had 1 of each. So because he had 1 of each, he couldn't get the double aces off to kill me, which meant that there was not a threat of that happening. Here I started looking for another game. I just chose not to. But ultimately, in that matchup, we want Gravity Blades as a super heavy hitter for clearing out his board. even though I did technically misplay twice there were two decent-sized misplays there that could have gone a little bit worse for us if we had it. There were certain things that can be done better there, but it is ultimately a very positive matchup for us. It's a pretty high-level matchup for us. High win rate matchup, I mean. So it is not something we should really fear. Adding in the extra 2Ks can potentially help here. And ultimately, I did feel pretty good about this list throughout the testing of it. So this will be the list for this series. We'll try to go over either like Boa, Perona, Bonnie, some of the other matchups here soon. I'll try to focus on some of the more difficult or closer matchups opposed to the ones that are kind of like heavy wins like the Bonnies and the RP Luffys. But we will focus on stuff like the Nami that can be kind of a close win or anything like that. But let me know how you guys feel about this list. Let me know how you guys are feeling about your Rebecca lists. Oh, and before I forget, it will be in the description as well as here at the end of the video. I am going to be posting a Discord link. I kind of wanted to start up a Rebecca mains Discord to a degree. So if you guys are ending up being interested in that, feel free to join in. I've made it kind of, it's a simple Discord. It's not anything fancy. I'm not very good at that stuff. But I'll have the link down in the description, so feel free to jump on in. It's going to be completely free. I just want it to be an area that we could all chat with. There's also the discussion board on the OP Discord as well, so that we can get more people there. But this is for us to build our own community, share our own memes, kind of have fun and goof off with it a bit, and get to play games and jam games against each other if we want. So until next time, guys, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Get your friends to subscribe if they're not subscribed. And until the next video, guys, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.